So, yes, I hear those blues a calling. It's time for the Frasier on Frasier podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's us. I'm your host, Adam Frazier, and with me is Wes Corwin.
How you guys doing?
And we got some exciting news. So we've entered a deal to host our podcasts on podcast.org.
Podcast.org. Adam, they're the hottest podcast website in the Tri-County state. That's huge.
They certainly are, Wes. So from now on, all of our podcasts, the Frasier on Frasier podcast, will be hosted on none other than podcast.org. So if you type that into your browser right now, you can go straight to podcast.org and download and listen to our podcast, which you're obviously already listening to now on podcast.org.
You're already there because we wouldn't put this anywhere else. We have an
we wouldn't put the
We have an exclusive deal with podcast.org.
Unless something terrible happens between now and the time that we record between the time that we record this and the time that we put this out on podcast.org.
Podcast.org famously has a filter where if you say anything racist, they immediately drop you, and your video gets uploaded to YouTube. So, but that won't happen because you're listening to this on podcast.org.
Right. So today we're going to talk about Roz in the Doghouse.
Roz in the Doghouse.
Season 2, episode 12 of Frasier. This the first time we have an episode where Roz's name is in the title. That's something.
This feels like the first Roz many episodes. I would in fact estimate maybe 95% of them have been about Frasier. Which is, I mean, the show is called Frasier. We have a pretty deep cast of talented actors. There are many episodes where Roz appears in the first minute and we never see her again. She has had many scenes between now and this time. This feels like the first episode where she has a significant chunk of focus around her, and that's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also think it's probably the first episode, probably in a while, where we've spent time sort of getting to see Frasier in his job.
Right.
So that was interesting. But this is one of those episodes where Frasier just comes off like a total dick.
Yeah.
For the entire episode.
He is a pretty big asshole. He really sticks his foot in it and then refuses to go back on it. And then the episode... Yeah, we'll get there. I'm sorry. But it is interesting in a different episode... No, I'm sorry. My thought is about the ending, which we'll get to organically. I don't have to... But it's the thing I feel strongest about. So
we'll set it up. So basically, in this episode, it deals with Frasier and Roz getting into a fight.
Into a scuffle of sorts.
Right. And not like a physical fight, but
an emotional
right.
Back and forth.
So Roz leaves Frasier's show to go work with Bulldog, hence the title Roz in the Doghouse. So we'll see how it plays out. I just want to say real quick. So I like I said, Frasier comes off like a kind of a total dick in this episode.
Yep.
And there are other episodes like this where Frasier is just kind of an asshole the entire time, and those are usually my least favorite. So this is, I think, maybe the first in a line of episodes that I'm going to be bringing this topic up of Frasier just being a jerk for no reason.
Right.
And it's and I mean it's because he's a character in a sitcom. He has to sometimes your character has to be your main obstacle.
I don't think to elaborate on this point, I don't know if it's out of character for him to be an asshole, but it does not make him likable. And he explains well. He's like, I'm very prideful. His dad is like, you're being stubborn. And he's like, it matters that I'm correct because I have a Harvard education. If I'm wrong, something is... Like, obviously he's a pompous, and for sure it doesn't make his character likable. It does make it make sense, but it doesn't make for like I don't watch any minute of this show going like, oh, I'm cheering for Frasier because he's a dick the entire time.
Well, I mean, he's a dick. I guess what I'm saying is he's a dick in these types of episodes. He's more of a dick than usual. He's less likable. Usually you have a character who has dickish traits, but you still kind of side with them at the end of the day. Frasier kind of is one of those types of characters, but this one doesn't do a good job of that.
Right.
So we'll get into the episode. Where it opens with Frasier and Roz. They're in the booth. Frasier's taking a call from Mary, who is played Marie.
Played. Go ahead.
No, if you want to say it, I was good. I didn't have it pulled up.
It's played by Carly Simon, famous music artist who wrote "You're So Vain." You probably think this song is about you.
Right, and she's done a lot of soundtrack stuff. She did the soundtrack for the movie Frequency. Frequency, that movie that everyone loves and remembers.
I love Frequency is my favorite movie. It has, oh God, Google, please load. It has Jim Caviezel and Dennis Quaid and a third person. Yeah, it's got those people.
Yeah, but no, she's worked on everything from like Winnie the Pooh to like Big Mouth, I think.
Yeah.
So, interesting career.
Right.
Anyway, she's playing Marie, and she is calling Frasier's show because she is worried about getting involved with a man who is in his 40s and has never been married.
What is interesting is the person that wrote this episode, Chuck Ranberg, famously co-wrote it with the co-writer Anne Flett Giordano. And Anne Flett Giordano wrote this joke, and Chuck Ranberg was like, "Hey, I'm 40 and unmarried. Is this joke about me?" To which Anne replied, "You're so vain. You think this joke is..." God, that took a while to get to, and I wasn't.
No, it was worth it.
Thank you.
It was worth it.
I needed. We're required to make 2 out-of-date song references by podcast.org, and shout out to podcast.org. Our relationship.
Shout out to podcast.org.
Yeah.
So Frasier. He makes a joke about how, well, maybe he's just lucky, and then she gets really pissed off because she's calling from a payphone, which don't exist anymore. But, but Frasier's like, well, give him a shot, but keep that caution bulb lit, which is really kind of, on the fence. Doesn't seem like very helpful advice to me.
Right. It's kind of non-advice. You can't be.
Right.
It's like a fortune cookie. Frasier can't be wrong because if it turns out it goes well, then Frasier can be like, "Well, I gave him a shot," and then if it doesn't go well, he's like, "Well, I said to keep the caution bulb lit," or whatever. So, it's literally the least helpful you can be is saying, "Choose both." I can't be incorrect here.
Right.
And Frasier wants the next caller, but Roz wants to give more direct advice, and she talks about how you have to watch out for divorced people, because if someone hasn't been married, they're a very careful shopper. Meanwhile, divorced people will stick their dick in anything. That's about what she says. She says something about squeezing fruit, but you know what she means. Frasier knows what she means, because he says she's squeezed more fruit than Tropicana. Which
is a dick thing to say on the air.
Literally on the air to his presumably hundreds or thousands of local Seattle-based listeners in the city that Roz lives in, calls her a whore that squeezes more quote-unquote fruit than Tropicana, a famous orange juice manufacturer.
I don't know how the people running the radio station have yet to call Frasier out on some of the terrible stuff he says on air.
I feel like
shout out to podcast.org.
Shout out to podcast.org. We'll never die. We're as long as we stay on podcast.org, we have the serum to immortality. We can't lose.
Yeah. So we move on to, well, no, we stay in the booth. It's after the show. Roz is, they go to break.
Yep.
And Roz has to run out of the station because she had, I think she double parked.
She had to park at a meter. She put in some coins, presumably, or she didn't, and she just needs to move her car real quick.
Right. So she's runs out in the hallway. She turns to Frazier for a moment, asking if she has headphone hair, which is a real thing that I constantly have to deal with after doing the show, because she's worried she's going to have to flirt her way out of a ticket.
Sure.
So it's at this moment we see Bulldog come up behind Roz, and he's like, oh, he like dropped a penny or something,
right?
And he bends over, and Roz, not seeing Bulldog, turns around, trips over him, and sprains her ankle.
Yep.
Or twists her ankle, something.
Twists her ankle, ruins her body. She just completely snapped. They're gonna have to put Roz down. I know we brought up earlier. That was to soften the blow for the fact this is the episode where they put Roz down. She's in the doghouse. Right. In that she's gone to dog have we're sending her to a farm where she can run around and stuff.
All Rozes go to heaven.
Yes. She is on the ground. Gil Chesterton is there for some reason. And
he works there, Wes.
He works there at a job where he reviews restaurants. A job that I still can't believe someone in this show has, or anyone ever had, but that's his job. Roz is on the ground, and Frazier is like, "Does this hurt?" And she screams. And Frazier's like, "Well, there's no nerve damage," which is funny.
Right.
And he proceeds. He starts to try to lift her up, and then Roz is like, "Frazier, the show." And then Frazier's like, "No, I'll get someone to fill in for me." And Roz is like, "No, you're on. You've got dead air." And he lets go of her and runs, which sort of sets the tone for the rest of the episode, where Frazier performatively is like, "Oh, Roz, I'll be there for you," and never shows up for her once over the course of the entire episode.
Right. So the people who assist Roz when Frazier goes to do the show is Gil and Bulldog. And we get a little scene with Gil where he's examining Roz's foot. And he's like, "Oh dear," and Roz is like, "What is it?" And Gil's like, "I see it's been a while since you had your last pedicure." And then the audience laughs, and then we go to our next scene.
Get to commercial.
Oh, we go to Roz's apartment, which we haven't seen before, I think.
It's like an apartment that is like the front door leads immediately into her bedroom, which is a joke that we don't discuss, but that's interesting and fun. You walk in. And there's her bed, and behind it is the kitchen. It's a very non-traditionally laid out apartment, I think.
Right. We don't even see. I doubt there's a bathroom even.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense within architecture. I don't know if that's a Seattle thing or like a sitcom fiction thing, but Roz's apartment doesn't make a lot. The longer you look at it, the more you're like, how does? Okay.
It's like an AI generated. An apartment floor plan, and that's what they built.
That is exactly what it's like.
But I was looking at the details, and like she's got like a lot of like photos hanging up everywhere in the apartment, and I'm trying to like think if it's because they're like if it's boyfriends or if it's like family members. We'll get into Roz's family as the series progresses, but it was just sort of an interesting detail I noticed. Mm-hmm. Frazier arrives, and first thing he points out is all the boots Roz has.
She has a collection
of boots
over her bed, as if knocking. Well, so Frazier makes a joke that is like, wouldn't it be easier to just put notches on the bedpost, as if every pair of boots was from a man. The joke is fine. For the studio audience laughs at it, but the longer I think about it, does Roz think like after fucking a man, she takes his boots, and then
that's what they mean by knocking boots.
don't think that's correct.
You take the man's boots and you knock them together, and then you put them on your shelf and you keep them.
And then you keep them, and he has to walk home barefoot, and that's why they call it the walk of shame, because you could stub your toe easily. You're very vulnerable. Yeah.
But I mean, they're women's boots. I mean, I feel like it's a bad joke, Frazier.
So then is the flip every time she successfully beds a man, she celebrates by going to Foot Locker and getting a pair of boots. The longer I think about this joke, the more I'm like, what the fuck does this mean?
There's another one like that in this episode, which we're gonna get to here pretty soon.
It kind of feels. I don't mean to hold too long. It kind of feels like the writers burned through all of their great Roz is a loose woman jokes a season and a half in, and are now really stretching to get to new areas. It's really getting like a little like you set up this scenario. You wrote a scene. It's the same thing that people complain. One of my favorite bits on a podcast is somebody complained about Waterboy with Adam Sandler, where they have a joke where Adam Sandler's character is talking to a college professor that's dressed like Colonel Sanders, and he says, "Thank you, Colonel Sanders." And it's a joke that people laugh at, but then you think about it, and you're like, Adam Sandler wrote in the script, the professor is dressed like Colonel Sanders. The character calls him Colonel Sanders. Like, where's the joke? And so somebody wrote, there are a bunch of boots over Roz's bed. Frazier says, wow, those are a lot of boots. I bet from fucking and stuff. And I guess that's comedy. I guess that's the joke.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think there's another joke coming up that just makes me really scratch my head.
I can't wait.
So we get into the whole reason Frazier is coming to visit Roz. I mean, of course, Roz is injured, and Frazier, being the compassionate boss that he is, just dumps a bunch of work onto her to do while she's bedridden. She's gonna have Roz answering fan mail. And don't send people that send death threats a photo. Not this time. I know last time we sent them all a photo, but not this time. Right. So at that same moment, there's a knock on the door, and it's Bulldog, and he's come to cheer Roz up, and I think it goes to show. I think I'm more rooting for Bulldog in this episode because he's actually comes off a lot more likable than Frazier does in this episode.
He does seem. We'll get there, but I will say,
right, we will.
Organically, right now, he brings a better gift. A little bit of food is usually good for somebody on the mend, and he also wants to hang out instead of immediately bouncing, which is cool. On the flip side, Roz is not looking forward to hanging with Bulldog and wants Frazier to stay there, which we know in 2020 is kind of like, if a lady feels uncomfortable and gives you a very clear verbal thing, hey, hang out, this guy is like creepy and I'm afraid he's going to hit on me and or assault me, usually cool to hang out for a bit. Instead, Frazier's like, no, I have to be at the opera. If something happens, don't tell me about it. I don't give a shit. And he takes his tickets and he leaves. There's a lot of dialogue where Roz kind of uncomfortably really asks Frazier to stick it with her because she knows they both know how obnoxious Bulldog is, and Frazier ain't give a fuck, and he leaves.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it still 2020? God, it's
20. Oh, you're
this
right.
year. This year never ends. God.
You make a good point, Adam. I meant the more general 2020s, but I also...
Right, the roaring 20s.
The roaring 20s. The jitterbug and the Lindy.
Yeah.
By which, of course, I refer to Charles Lindbergh's kidnapped son. Anyway.
Shout out to podcast.org.
Oh, no. That wouldn't trigger their thing, do you think, right?
No, of course not. Yeah,
okay,
we're good.
We're good.
So Bulldog, Bulldog brings Roz food. He brings her wild turkey, and it's it's a very considerate given the fact that she's injured. And he goes to we get a classic Bulldog joke where he says he can't find the French fries that they got her, and it's like, this stinks, this is total BS, and then, oh wait, I found it.
Which would be if you're a consistent listener or you're just a Frasier fan, you would know that they've done this joke like 4 times. But it's new this episode. As the famous quote goes, if I haven't seen it, it's new to me, and I've seen it. So,
and so the joke that they make is that so Bulldog shows that he's got the whiskey. Ross is like, okay, glasses are in the kitchen. And Bulldog's like, you don't have any ice, and she is like, oh, we'll just scrape whatever's off, like whatever's on the sides of the freezer.
Yeah.
Just scrape those shavings off into a glass and pour me the whiskey.
Yep.
And when Bulldog comes back, he says, I'll get you more ice. I just have to wait for the feeling in my head to return, or something along those lines. And it's like, so was Bulldog bashing his head against the inside of the freezer in order to collect ice?
I think that's the only way you can interpret that joke.
Well, no, because I thought of another. Well, like, because maybe, and this is a bit of a stretch, but bear with me. Okay. We've had jokes about how short Bulldog is, right? And if he was standing in front of a refrigerator, his forehead might come up to freezer height. So he's standing there getting ice off the side of the freezer. Meanwhile, his forehead's cold, and he's losing the feeling in his forehead. That's the only other way I can think to interpret it. But I don't. It's such a strange. Yeah. I don't get it. I honestly don't know. Yeah. Why. This joke is terrible. These
right. So Frazier is like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm late to my throwing hot dogs down a hallway contest. Something you're familiar with, Roz. Something like that. And then he leaves, and he's got to go to opera. So Bulldog comes in, and Roz tries to get him to leave very quickly. He gets out a couple glasses, clinks glasses, and she's like, bye. And Bulldog offers to paint her. He notices that Roz has only painted a couple toenails, and he asks why. And Roz is like, well, it hurts too much to paint the other ones. And Bulldog offers to finish painting the nails for her.
Which is creepy.
It's a little weird, and it doesn't help that he immediately compliments her feet, which she finds charming. And that's right. You can tell that a man wrote this scene, I think.
Quentin Tarantino wrote this scene.
You make a good point, Adam.
He was a guest writer.
He is a guest writer on the show.
Oh my God, Chuck Randberg is an anagram for Quentin Tarantino.
Adam, you got to be careful. We're going to get silenced. Podcast.org is sponsored by Quentin Tarantino. You got to be careful when you say these things. Roz says so. But we do know that Roz has I think, some physical self-esteem issues. In very odd ways, she in the past episodes have asked if Frazier she has an unattractive back of the head, or if she looks. She's the kind of person
very self-conscious.
So she might take a compliment about how she's got great feet very well, as she does. Fine. And Bulldog says something even weirder, where she's like, "You kidding? I could get this whole thing in my mouth." Easy. I guess to comfort her that her feet aren't too big, but that's just too Quentin Tarantino. Even Quentin Tarantino would look at the script and go like, let's get a second draft. Let's try to make this a little more, let's put some of this in the subtext. Let's let the camera do some of the work here.
Right.
But Roz is still taking this in stride. She says, it's nice of you to do this. And then Bulldog says, if I'm nice to you, I figure maybe you'll be nice to me. Roz is immediately disgusted that there's obviously some quid pro quo, like, kindness.
Which is weird given the comments that he just made. He says something at least somewhat more innocuous, like, if you're nice to me, or if I'm nice to you, you'll be nice to me.
Yeah. Bulldog is kind of he's an odd guy. Sometimes he's subtle but most of the time he's a
when he's trying to be comforting, he comes off as being a creepy sex man.
Right.
And when he's trying to ask and when he's being sincere and genuine, when he's coming off as a creepy sex man, it's interpreted as being nice and genuine, and when he's trying to be nice and genuine and sincere, it comes off as being a creepy sex man.
Yeah. But Bulldog tries to calm her down, and it comes out that he would like Roz to produce Bulldog's show. And Bulldog isn't crazy about his current producer, and says Roz is the best producer there is. Maybe not just at the studio, but in general, the best radio producer. And when Roz is like, "You think I'm the best?" Bulldog says that goes without saying. Very kind. And Roz makes a comment that Frazier goes every day without saying it. And Bulldog says. You don't have to answer right now. Take your time, but I gotta warn you, when I set my mind to something, I get it. I once wanted to interview George Foreman. He said no, but I got him. And then he starts painting the toes again and says, I had to paint his toenails 4 times, but I got him. Which is a goofy mental picture, especially at the time, imagining a very muscular George Foreman having his toes painted. It's fun. It's a fun visual.
And then now you have to paint all my son George's toes as well.
Yeah.
All my sons are named George.
All of my sons are George.
That's the only thing I really, that and the grill stuff. That's the only stuff I know about George Foreman.
And now you have to clean my grill. I'm George Foreman. You know. That's my George Foreman.
I had to paint his his grill's toenails.
Yep.
So we get to our next scene. It's Roz in Frazier's apartment, and Daphne is giving her a massage. She's massaging the injured foot that Roz has, and she's making comments like, "Oh, you're wrapping your bandages too tight." And Roz is like, "Oh man, Daphne, that feels great. Whatever Frazier's paying you, it's not enough." And Daphne's like, "Actually, I need a raise to get me to not enough." Yeah, because Frasier's a terrible person in this episode.
If there's a single implication that Frazier treats anyone in his life well, it's not in this episode.
No.
I think the implication is that he is a man of terrible taste and terrible. He's Scrooge, but he never learns his lesson. He's visited by 3 spirits, and then he takes a picture and he sells it as proof that ghosts exist and makes $1 million, and that's the moral. That's how that goes.
Now I'm even richer.
Now I'm even more wealthy. I can throw more children into the coal mines or something. Yeah. So there's sort of a B plot unless you think there's a reason to talk about it for very long. I'm kind of okay. The gist of it is Niles got Martin a new pair of shoes with tassels, and
which I'm taking off points for consistency, Frasier writers, because in the episode My Coffee with Niles, Niles specifically states that he's not a tassel man.
Right.
He doesn't like tassels on shoes.
Inconsistent.
He's still yes. So granted, he's buying them for Martin, but still, that never would have worked. That's inconsistent.
Have you even watched one episode of our podcast, Writers of Frasier, from 1994? No, yeah. So apparently Niles really likes this shoemaker. He's an artisan, an Italian artisan in a hilltop village above Florence. When he makes a pair of shoes, everyone in town celebrates, and they ring a cathedral bell. And Martin
Roz says, there's a town that needs a bowling alley.
Right.
But up.
That's really like, if you don't mind. Turns out Martin isn't a big fan of the shoes, and he gets a pair that light up, and that's kind of the end. Once again, we're back at a point where there's not really a B plot to these episodes. We're mostly focused on the Roz Frazier stuff.
Yeah,
there's
Frazier and Roz get into a fight, and they split up. Niles buys Martin shoes.
Yeah,
to take some shoe shopping.
It's barely anything. It barely pays off in any way, shape, or form. Niles doesn't even seem particularly bothered that Martin got himself his own pair of shoes. But anyway, Frazier is in a very good mood. He had a very good episode. He felt like he did a brilliant job of cutting a narcissist down to size, which is humorous because he's complimenting himself and how great he is. The beat by beat of what happens next is Frazier apologizes to Roz because he abandoned her with Bulldog, and says, "I hope you didn't spend the whole evening like trying to get Bulldog to stop having sex with you," which is a horrifying thing to apologize to somebody for. And Roz is like, "No, we had a great time," and Frazier immediately goes to, "Oh, you fucked him." I noticed that, he was wearing the same clothes he had on yesterday, and I know Bulldog to be a very well-kempt man and not a slob, so he must have fucked you, Roz. He must have had sex with you. And Roz is, of course, a little insulted, even considering all of the jokes about how many men she has sex with. Neither of them find Bulldog to be particularly a tasteful human being, so the implication that, like, she would have sex with Bulldog isn't something she's a big fan of.
And it's also the fact that he goes on to say that, Roz says, well, actually, the reason why the thing he kept hounding me about was he wanted me to be a producer on his show and leave you,
and
Frazier.
not produce your show anymore, exclusively.
Right.
And Frazier's like, oh, he said that because he wants to have sex with you. And Roz gets really angry because the larger implication is that Roz isn't good at her job, which is interesting because we've seen for a season and a half Roz take so many digs about how many, but once Frazier insults her skills as a producer, it's over. The friendship is gone, dead. And Roz is
friendship with Frazier ended.
There's a note here that I haven't pre-read, but I also don't know how hard I believe these scripts. We're reading these from KACL780.net. In an earlier draft, the line was Niles says when providing content, Frazier says something like his ultimate goal, as in Bulldog's ultimate goal, remains to, and then he takes a pause to, and then Roz says what, and then Niles says to play Aeneas to your Dido, which is a Greek theater reference, I believe.
Yeah.
Originally, the line was dip his biscotti in your latte. And then the note says Aeneas is a figure from classical literature, a hero of the Trojan War who escaped to Carthage and had a passionate affair with the Queen Dido before abandoning her to go to Italy. Yeah, it's a Greek drama reference. Anyway,
and
Roz
there's also
go ahead.
There's also, I want to point out, there's also a good joke where Daphne says, "Well, it's not fair. Dr. Crane, meaning Niles, is always dropping by and bringing me little gifts, and that doesn't mean he's after anything."
Right.
And of course, as we know, Niles is totally after Daphne.
Niles is really trying to have an affair, or I think we talked last episode that it's possible he and Maris just have a weird open thing that might include Frazier based on the fact that she hit on him when they were working on the toilet. Anyway, either way, Roz is very insulted because Frazier doesn't think she's a good producer, and then Roz points out that Frazier is bad at hosting. Like, she says, "I've heard your expert advice. The only mental disorder you've ever cured is insomnia because this show is so boring it puts people to sleep." And then Frazier says something. The prostitute store called and they're running out of you.
He says, "My God, a cockatoo with a strong beak could do what you do," because he says all that Roz does is press buttons,
answer phones and push buttons. So you just gotta that's. And then Roz is like, "Then you hire one. I'm taking the job with Bulldog." And in what is probably the best written joke of the episode, Roz tries to storm out, but of course she still has one good leg, and she tries to hobble and keeps saying very dramatic things. She says, "I'm out of here," and then she continues to very weakly, very slowly hobble. She's like, "Take a picture, because I'm not in your life." And then she keeps, and then she gets to the door and says, "Oh damn, my purse," and that's very well done. I don't know how. I know we've spoken glowingly on, I think, David Hyde Pierce. We've spoken very complimentarily on Daphne and John Mahoney, and of course Kelsey. This is the first, again, as we were pointing out, this is really the first showcase for Roz, and she also does a great job. It's a fantastic series.
Yeah, I think she does.
Yeah.
And we skip to our next episode, our next scene, where it's Frazier doing his radio show, but instead of Roz in the producer's booth, it is Bruce, Weird Bruce, as Frazier calls him earlier in that scene, which we skipped over.
Right.
So it's Bruce, and he's played by.
Take your time. Take your time, Adam. This isn't audio poison at all. Garrett Maggart.
Garrett Maggart. From we all know from the TV show The Sentinel.
Yeah.
Of course, who could forget The Sentinel?
Yeah.
Classic television show that ran from 1996 to 1999.
Right. You know what's funny is Garrett Maggart, when playing this character, he adopted some mannerisms that were not mentioned by the director, and the writer Chuck Ranberg was there and is like, "Well, hey, are you doing my mannerisms to play this character?" And Garrett was like, "You are so vain." Anyway, shout out to podcast.org.
Shout out to podcast.org.
Put it out there. Put it out there.
Put it up on the screen.
Put it up on the screen. Podcast.org. We can do that, right? Now that we're a podcast on podcast.
Of course.
Put it up on the screen.
Frazier is in the booth. Bruce is taking calls or routing calls to Frazier.
Usually, something that producers are very good at is just being as we've seen, or rather not had to notice. Roz does a great job just cycling through the calls in a way that is not distracting from what Frazier is doing.
She's on top of things.
And it's a great indication that she is a great producer. And it's a good opportunity to see someone who's a bad producer, because Bruce stops the show to ask Frazier what his favorite number is when he could just pick a phone call, or it doesn't matter what caller we pick. He could just put somebody on. So instead he insists on stalling the show, and then Frazier says 3, as in caller number 3. Bruce accidentally hangs up on that person and then wants the other favorite number. And then Frazier insists on taking the driver's wheel, puts in a caller. And at this point, we're talking to Francesca, played by Rosie Perez.
Rosie Perez, the voice of Chell in The Road to El Dorado.
Mm-hmm. That's
the only thing I know her from.
She was also in White Man Can't Jump and Do the Right Thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was really more interested in her performance in Road to El Dorado.
That's fair. She was in Birds of Prey, but she was in that animated movie about El Dorado. There was a fun armadillo that didn't speak. Yeah, it was great.
There was a basketball scene, was
there was it was a sideways basketball.
It was a sideways hoop.
Yeah.
Shout out to podcast.org.
Put it up on the screen. Podcast.org.
So we get so we can see things clearly aren't going well for Frazier and his new producer, and Frazier, at the end of the show, after the show is finished, he's all like, "Well, that was a terrible show, Bruce. You there was technical glitches, and you were eating potato chips.
There was a screeching sound. You were eating potato chips. I didn't get to make one joke about how often you fuck people. Bruce.
I don't think this should be an episode we're mailing off to the Smithsonian. Right. And Bruce is like, don't worry, man. You'll do better tomorrow. And then he just kind of walks out.
Which, no, I love Bruce. Bruce is fantastic.
Bruce is my new favorite character.
Between Bulldog and Bruce, I love them both. I love all the bees. Yeah. We immediately, as we've seen in the past, Frasier's show is typically followed by Bulldog, and Roz and Bulldog roll in, and they seem pretty amped. Bulldog makes a joke about how hope that Frasier hasn't been avoiding him just because he stole Frasier's chick. And then Frazier says, "Oh, Bruce and I are getting along great," as my producer. And Roz is like, "Yeah, I heard Bruce. What happened? The cockatoo want too much money?" Which is a fun callback to earlier when Frazier said a cockatoo could do Roz's job. And as we just determined, either Bruce is less competent than a cockatoo, or Frazier's analogy was inaccurate and misguided.
So Frazier walks out into the hallway, and Gil Chesterton is there. And Gil is planning a party because he is the city's foremost food critic, radio food critic. He's putting it together to celebrate our fair city's great bounty from the sea.
Basically, they got a lot of shellfish in Seattle, which is what Fruta de Mare is, and he wants to celebrate that with a sweet shellfish party. So that's what Gil does. That's what Gil's life is.
So he's in an awkward position because he wants to invite Frasier, but he's already invited Roz.
And he's worried that all the awkward energy is going to ruin his shellfish party. As we all know, when you're hosting a shellfish party, it's so important that everybody get along. Otherwise, how are they going to enjoy the shellfish at the shellfish party?
Frasier, don't ruin my clam bake.
Frasier, I swear to God, I bought so many crab cakes. I got a Fudgy the Whale crab cake, a thing that they do not make. Do not blow this for me. I would love if Gil Chesterton, one episode, just spoke in a very normal voice. That's what I want, because current Gil makes me deeply uncomfortable. So Gil becomes Frasier's side person, so Frazier isn't just sitting there talking to himself. And Frazier is confident that Bulldog is going to blow this, and then Roz will come back to him. And we see a moment where Roz is bending over for an extended period of time. And
Frazier, they're rooting for Bulldog to sexually harass her.
Right. Gil refers to it as teeing it up. So he's supposed to Bulldog might walk up and pinch her or spank her or do an air hump that would offend Roz, and this is something that both of these characters are cheering for, one of which is the title character of the show that we're watching, which is weird.
But that doesn't happen.
Right. Bulldog is a gentleman and notices that Roz dropped some papers and went to go pick up the papers. And Frasier is probably thinking as Roz bends over, "Geez, Roz, the third guy you've bent over for today." And at this point, it's like, which of you is really the problem at this workplace, Frasier? The guy who constantly belittles and demeans your coworkers, or the guy who's treating her with respect? Bulldog is gross, but comparatively, you're kind of also gross, Frasier.
We're seeing another side to Bulldog in this episode, and that's kind of where some of the payoff comes later. But
we very briefly watch a segment of Bulldog and Roz together, and they kind of nail it. They have a good.
Do.
It's like Howard Stern. They pick on each other and goof on each other super hard. Roz immediately adapts to Bulldog's super high energy by going at him hard and coming at his roast jokes with her own roast jokes, and they sync together perfectly.
And using horns and sound effects.
She brought her own fun sound effects, which again, we've communicated this before, they usually have a soundboard. You don't have to bring horns from home.
Not back then, Wes.
But Roz did because she knows Bulldog brings his own stuff from home. It's crazy.
I laughed out loud at the part where Bulldog is known for like barking on his show. So like at the very beginning, he barks, and then Roz, she goes meow. She meows like
the script says
like
meows
cat.
like a cat, but it's not. It's more like he does a very aggressive bark, and she goes like "Arr!" which is fun. She is contributing positively to the bit that Bulldog has created, which is crazy. This is their first episode together, and they're nailing it.
Right, just like we're nailing it.
Yeah. Shout out to podcast.org. Yeah.
So it seems to be going well for Roz and Bulldog, not so well for Frazier.
We see a quick montage of people who are his new producers set to the song They Call Me Mr. Pitiful. A chain-smoking old lady, a cat lady, a very... Okay, and again... So this is a weird thing. I will communicate. There are 5 people. I'm going to cover the 1, 2, 4, and 5, and then number 3, because I feel like it's an important communication on Frasier. First one is a chain-smoking old lady. Second one is a cat lady who just has cats in the studio. Obviously a problem. The fourth guy is like trying to put buttons in and starts like weeping at his desk, having a hard time. I understand that. And the fifth guy is just really old and has fallen asleep in his chair. Fine. All of these people, obviously not ideal producers. The third one is just a lady with, like, trying to speak politically sensitively, just has a large set of breasts, just well endowed, the script says. And for some reason, this is treated as bad as cat lady, chain-smoking lady, neurotic guy, and guy who's asleep at work is, that woman's tits are really big. She can't work here. Again... this episode does not reflect well on Frasier, who finds all 5 of these people impossible to work with.
Well, I mean, I guess the implication for the well-endowed woman is that she's so beautiful that Frasier can't help but not like sexually harass her.
Right. That's not. You know how that's worse.
No, I know that's worse. I'm just saying it out loud so it's clear.
I got it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So we get and you know, I have a weird I had like a weird Mandela effect moment with this episode because I swear I remembered watching this episode way back when, and I swear there was one other shot of someone in the booth and they had an actual cockatoo like just bending over like just sitting in Roz's chair.
That would be so funny. That would have been
it would have been good, but it's not there, and I'm like, well, that was like such an obvious. They should have done that.
That would be absolutely fantastic.
So we get our next scene. We get our next title card, which is possibly one of the best title cards we've had in a while. Niles meets the Goat Boy. Which there are so many images running through my head when I hear that title card, and I'm afraid the scene doesn't quite live up to it. Niles doesn't meet a goat boy, and they don't go on like a magical, cross-country adventure together.
It's not a situation where Niles meets a faun, and he's like, come to the center of the labyrinth, and then he meets some horrifying characters. And it turns out Niles was always a young boy in the Spanish Civil War. We don't get any of that. It's just Niles goes on. We do reintroduce Yoshi, who, much like Maris, is an unseen character that appears at Niles. Somewhere out there, there's a Niles spinoff that never came to light where Maris and Yoshi are both characters. But Yoshi just got very, very drunk and took his hedge trimmer and turned Maris's prize hedge stallion into a goat boy. And that's how Niles met the goat boy. Again, great title card that tees the ball up very high and doesn't quite make contact.
Yeah. So Frasier, says, "Well, thank you, Niles. That makes me feel better. I'm not a complete loser, even though my show is going down the drain."
Right.
And again, he's complaining. It's like, oh, well, why hasn't Bulldog made his move on Roz? He should have sexually assaulted her by now.
There's one very brief moment that I want to rewind to, where Frazier listens to his brother's problems and immediately makes it about him and talks about like, oh man, my show is ending, but I'm sorry that your hedges are shitty. And Niles literally says, it's always about you, isn't it? Jesus. Again, there's no line of this show that puts Frazier in an even kind of positive light. Even his own friends and family are like, good God, can you care about anyone that isn't yourself, you monster man? Anyway.
Daphne and Martin come in, and as you mentioned earlier, Martin has traded in the tasseled pair of holy holy shoes.
Yep.
That were forged in the fires of Peru or something.
Yeah.
And he has gotten a pair of light up sneakers, which look pretty good on Martin, if I do say so myself. I always wanted light up sneakers when I was a kid. My parents never let me have them.
They were the devil's work. The light up sneakers are the key to premarital sex and drugs and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You can't have light up.
They said it was a gateway to slang.
Yep.
So, so Daphne and Martin enter the scene, and pretty much again just to kind of point out what a dick Frazier is being, pretty much. Daphne was like, I don't see what was so hard about telling Roz that you're wrong. And Frazier, again, like you mentioned earlier, says, well, it's not just that. If I'm wrong, I'm someone who went to Harvard who is wrong, and then the world makes a little less sense.
Right.
And, yeah.
Meanwhile, somebody that works at Cafe Nervosa is like, okay, I'm going home now with the community bicycle. We all share this bicycle, and this is my bicycle. But we all take turns on the bicycle, but this is mine. And Frazier says, boy, Roz has sex with women? with men. Blew it. You knew what village bicycle. Damn it. And then that's, yeah.
Well, no, but this is one of those scenes that makes me like, if I was working in Cafe Nervosa, or if I was even just a patron, I would hate it when these people walked through the door.
Oh, sure.
Because they're always having conversations, like full shouting, while everyone else is being like whispering.
It's a library that four people are yelling at full volume in all the time.
Right.
And so Frazier points out, Niles says something like, while both Martin and Daphne kind of are like, you should apologize. Just tell Roz you're wrong, you're miserable, and your show is dying, and your career is dying. Stop being prideful. And Frazier's like, no, I can't. And then Niles says, I don't understand why you want her back at all. That's, you're being she is pushy and opinionated. And Frazier's like, that's sexist. Like, you don't see some bias there? She's labeled pushy because, for doing things that men doing would be called, like, assertive and very, like, forward, like, active.
Right.
And Daphne's like, I think that's true. And Frazier's like, I got this. Keep it to yourself. Go back to the kitchen.
Go back. Exactly.
Frazier's like, shouldn't you be making 77 cents on the dollar or something like that? You know how it is.
You're a slut, Daphne.
Sorry, I haven't been around Ross in a while, so these are just coming out now.
So Daphne, how does this scene end? Oh, so Daphne says that he should beg Roz for forgiveness. Frazier is like, oh, well, I'm just not ready to swallow my pride. And then as he's leaving, the old man who we last saw being the producer of Frasier's show and sleeping through the show, he walks in the door and he's like, next time, wake me up when the show's over. And then he just walks away.
Yep.
So, yeah.
He's played by Edward Gallick, who is known for this episode and nothing else.
There's no other information on him. He was in this. He was created for this scene and this scene alone. This is his only trace that he was ever on this earth.
CBS was famous at the time for they put a lot of funding into the Dolly sheep cloning experiment. So they were experimenting with creating extras and then basically extra clones, and then you'd kill the clones, and then you wouldn't owe them royalties or residuals for other episodes. And they saved about, I think, about $26 to date for making an Ed clone and then killing him after the episode.
Right after this scene, they finished filming this scene. His DNA became unstable, and he just turned into a puddle on the floor.
He did. Very, very efficient. Great move on CBS's part.
So we get our next scene.
We get our this is our finale scene, I believe.
Oh yeah, I guess it is. This episode felt really short while I was watching it.
Yeah, it's short, and it also feels stretchy, and basically we wanted to get to the story comes to its real conclusion when we see Bulldog talk Roz into it. They fight, and then the scene in the radio station where you see them getting along. You can kind of skip the coffee shop scene if you wanted to, and then we come to this scene. But obviously, we needed to make it 22 minutes. It provides additional context. The coffee shop, and of course, we close the ever so important Martin gets shoes B plot. But it's fine. It's all fine.
Yeah. So we go back to Roz's apartment. Bulldog and Roz.
They're pitching. They're planning their next episode or the next series of episodes, and Bulldog is going through the schedule. And he is very, as we covered in the first scene where he freaks out. He gets very intense very quickly. So, for instance, he's like, okay, so this Wednesday we're gonna do my NFL picks. I'm gonna say who's gonna win the games, and then we're gonna do my boner of the week. And Roz is like, no, we can't do that. And Bulldog says, this is why I hate you. You're always trying to change my format. Why can't we do it? And Roz is like, because I got you an interview with Wayne Gretzky. And Bulldog is like, Wayne Gretzky? Oh, my God. And then he's like, this is awesome. You're brilliant. And then he, lifts his arm so hard he pinches a nerve in his...
It's a flip. I don't know what the comedic term for it is. I'm sure you know, Wes.
It's a turn.
It's a turn on the whole Bulldog saying this stinks, this is total BS, and then saying, oh, this is the opposite. He's saying something's great, it's total brilliance, and then something bad happens. He pinches a nerve. Anyway,
Adam, I'm proud of you. You're starting to understand comedy. It's exciting to see.
Yeah. and I'm starting to see when the show doesn't do it well too.
Yep.
So he says it's from it's from an old football injury that's acting up. He got his head rammed into a locker when he tried to interview Mike Ditka,
who is a football. He's a coach, I believe. Unless he interviewed Mike Ditka while he was. No, okay, he was a player. He's a former football player, coach, television commentator. He's done it all. He's an old man now. He's 81 years old. And at one point in 1994, he slammed Bulldog into a locker at full speed. And now Bulldog has pain in his neck on occasions. An interesting joke that probably worked better before we had a healthcare crisis. But that's not Frasier's fault. Let me communicate this very clearly. I don't blame CBS's Frasier for the ongoing healthcare crisis. Anyway, so
shout out to podcast.
Put it up on the screen. Podcast.org. Roz starts to massage his neck as a thing of kindness because, as we covered in the first half of the episode, Bulldog showed her some painted her toes when she was injured. So Roz is trying to help him get the crick out of his neck, and Bulldog is like, you are the great one, which is a reference to Wayne Gretzky's nickname as a hockey player, the Great One. And so she's a great producer. And Roz says, I owe you. I'm having a great time. I owe you big. And at that point, Bulldog is like, oh, that's consent. I get to fuck you now. And that is, to be fair, he doesn't force himself on Roz. Yeah, but there's a little thing in his head that's like, oh, those are the words when a woman wants to have the sex with you. And he has decided that Roz is very down, which of course she's not, and we know she's not. Unfortunately, Bulldog is an idiot, and despite all of the great moves he's made up to this point at being a human being, which he's never been before, this is unfortunately where things are going to end badly for Bulldog. I will say, and again, this is an episode that showcases a couple people that haven't had a ton of fun acting bits. Bulldog, when he's doing the pulling off all his clothes and he goes into his suitcase and he grabs the various things
he has like a fuck bag that he just carries with him.
He carries around with him. He has a boombox that plays romantic music. He has flower petals leading up to the bedroom. He has a candle. He has some cologne. He has a feather for like that sort of kink if you're into that. I have to say it's creepy that he has this ready at all times. I appreciate that he's into the presentation, but obviously Roz is not down. Unfortunately Bulldog completely misread the situation, and he's kind of a creep. And so they have a couple misunderstanding, Oscar Wilde kind of back and forth, where Bulldog is like, so did you and Frazier ever end up working like this? And Roz is like, oh, we tried it once, but he complained I talked too much. As in, Roz would have been talking while they had sex.
Right.
And Bulldog is like, I would have figured you were a screamer. There is one joke that I like, and it's where Bulldog goes into his fuck bag and he pulls out a pair of handcuffs and then he looks at them for a second and he goes, no, second date. Don't be don't be pushy, which is gentlemanly, but not in a good way. This episode has issues with consent.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
But you were about to get to a joke that I thought was at least clever the way that it was written, where Bulldog says, "Oh, I would have figured you for a screamer." At which point Roz walks back into the scene and sees Bulldog on the bed and then screams because
very funny because she's a screamer. Yeah. And Roz freaks out. Is like, "What are you doing in my bed? Get out! Get out! I asked you over for work. You're disgusting." To which Bulldog says, "You're gonna have to slow down. I'm getting mixed signals here," which is again a consent, but very funny. Especially the thing that I think this scene benefits from is obviously Bulldog is the buffoon and Roz is in a position of power to throw him out. Not always the case in real life, but it's fun. I don't know if it's fun. It's hard to write a good scene between a man that wants to fuck a girl and she's not into it, but she's bigger than him and throws his clothes out and he leaves without a fight. So if you have to write a scene where this happens, I think it's among the better ones, but that's still a weird thing people write. And unfortunately, when Roz opens the door, there's Frazier with a bouquet of flowers. He was going to apologize, but now he doesn't have to because he was right the whole time because Bulldog tried to have sex with Roz, and we go to the credits. There is a...
So we can assume from the end credits skit that they do that Roz stops working for Bulldog, but then we're not really given a reason why she goes back to Frazier, because Frazier, despite the fact that he was correct about Bulldog, still treated Roz like terribly in this episode.
Absolute dirt. Just a terrible co-working relationship, and the kind of thing that he should still apologize for. And we're left to maybe assume that he apologized, but we never see it on screen. To address the after credits bit, it's the rare moment, as we've covered, sometimes the KACL780.net script deviates from the actual episode, and in this case it kind of does. So the end credits actually sounds better than how it is. So if you watch the show, Bulldog is playing he's doing his show. He's trying to get Ed's, the old man, who's now Bulldog's producer, trying to get his attention.
The man who was sleeping earlier through Frasier's show.
So he starts trying to yell "hey" and then tapping on his microphone, and neither action works. Blows on his whistle, and then comes out and starts like blaring a horn in Ed's ear. Nothing wakes him up, and then right before we fade to black, Bulldog puts a couple fingers on his throat to check his pulse. But we don't. So the script implies that Bulldog checks his pulse, and then I was expecting like a big bug-eyed. I was like, this would be a good end credits bit. Is the reveal that this guy is actually dead? That is very dark. That is very funny. But instead, Bulldog just checks his pulse, and then by then we've already faded to black and have no idea what's happening.
I think there's a bit of a reaction from Bulldog. When I saw that, I noticed there was a look on his face when he went to go check his pulse. I think it's more accurate than some of the other stuff that we've read in the scripts.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a good piece of physical acting where they just have those scenes where there's no dialogue, just making jokes over the credits while Kelsey Grammer sings about scrambled eggs. So yeah, that is pretty much our episode, Roz, in the Doghouse. Wes, I am super excited to be talking about the next episode. I know you've probably been looking forward to it. It's Retirement is Murder.
Retirement is Murder.
Frazier is excited when he believes that he's cracked Martin's long unsolved case, the Weeping Lotus murder.
No way, really? Oh
yes.
My god!
So we're going to learn all about the Weeping Lotus murder, and you're going to hear all about it right here on podcast.org. Actually, hold on. Yeah, I'm getting a text from the...
Oh, you're getting a text in the middle of...
I'm getting a text from the podcast.org people.
From the podcast.org people. I hope it's to congratulate on a humdinger of an episode.
Their company has gone bankrupt.
Oh.
The Frasier on Frasier podcast wishes to thank KACL780.net for providing episode transcripts, and Ronald O'Connell for providing our theme song, Frasier MIDI.